When people talk about the Bible, it is often described as if it speaks with a single voice, as if it offers one consistent tone, one clear philosophy of life, and one unified way of explaining how the world works. But when you actually read it closely, that idea does not hold. The Bible contains internal tension. Different books speak differently about the same realities. And this is not a flaw in the text. It is one of its defining features. A clear example of this appears when you place Proverbs and Ecclesiastes side by side. Both books belong to what scholars call wisdom literature. Both are traditionally associated with Solomon. Both are concerned with how to live well. And yet, they often seem to describe completely different worlds. Proverbs presents a world that appears morally ordered. Actions lead to outcomes in a predictable way. Wisdom leads to life. Folly leads to ruin. Righteousness is rewarded. Wickedness collapses under its own weight. In Proverbs chapter 3, verses 3 through 4, we read that faithfulness and wisdom will bring favor and good success. In Proverbs 10:4, diligence leads to wealth, while laziness leads to poverty. Proverbs 11:5 says that the righteousness of the blameless keeps their path straight, while the wicked fall by their own wrongdoing. The underlying assumption is clear. The world is structured in such a way that moral choices generally produce corresponding results. Proverbs functions as instruction. It teaches patterns. It assumes that the universe is intelligible, and that wisdom aligns a person with how reality is meant to work. Then you open Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes does not argue politely with Proverbs. It openly contradicts its sense of order. In Ecclesiastes 7:15, the author states that he has seen righteous people perish despite their righteousness, and wicked people live long lives despite their evil. In Ecclesiastes 9:11, we are told that the race does not go to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, nor success to the wise, but that time and chance happen to them all. This is not a marginal observation. It is a repeated theme. Ecclesiastes insists that wisdom does not guarantee success, righteousness does not guarantee safety, and effort does not guarantee reward. Life, as observed, does not reliably behave the way Proverbs suggests it should. Ecclesiastes reinforces this instability through its language. The Hebrew word, hevel, often translated as vanity or meaningless, refers to vapor or breath, something fleeting and difficult to grasp. The point is not that life has no value, but that it resists permanence and control. Where Proverbs teaches order, Ecclesiastes emphasizes instability. When placed together, these books create tension, and that tension is often resolved too quickly by readers who assume one must correct the other. But the Bible itself never resolves it. Instead, both books are preserved. Both are treated as authoritative. Both are read aloud in the life of the community. That fact alone tells us something important. The biblical tradition does not flatten experience into a single explanation. It allows instruction and observation to coexist, even when they seem to clash. One way to understand this is through genre. Proverbs is instructional wisdom. It teaches how life generally works when the moral order is respected. It is prescriptive. It tells you what aligns with wisdom. Ecclesiastes, observational wisdom. It records what life looks like when that order appears to break down. It is descriptive. It tells you what is seen, not what ought to happen. The problem arises when Proverbs is treated as a collection of promises rather than patterns. When someone assumes that wisdom guarantees outcomes, Ecclesiastes becomes unintelligible or threatening. But Ecclesiastes exists precisely to challenge that assumption. It says, in effect, that wisdom is still valuable, but it is not a mechanism for control. The world is not a machine that reliably rewards correct behavior. This internal dialogue protects the reader from simplistic theology. If Proverbs stood alone, suffering would always appear deserved. If Ecclesiastes stood alone, effort would seem pointless. Together, they prevent both errors. The Bible does not deny moral order. It also does not deny lived contradiction. This is why these texts have endured. They do not offer a single emotional register. They reflect the complexity of human experience across time. Rather than harmonizing the tension, the biblical canon preserves it. It allows readers to live with unresolved questions instead of forcing premature conclusions. In that sense, Proverbs and Ecclesiastes are not enemies. They are conversation partners. One teaches how wisdom aims to shape life. The other reminds us that life does not always cooperate. The presence of both suggests that faith, as presented in Scripture, is not built on guaranteed outcomes, but on sustained engagement with reality as it is, not merely as it should be. The Bible does not speak with one tone, it speaks with depth, and that depth includes disagreement, reflection, and honest observation, all held together without apology. That internal dialogue is not a weakness of the text. It is one of its most deliberate features. Proverbs speaks to how people are taught to understand the world early on, cause and effect, effort and reward, wisdom and outcome. Ecclesiastes speaks to what happens when lived reality refuses to conform to that framework. The dialogue between them is not abstract theology. It is the movement from expectation to disillusionment. In other words, these books do not merely disagree with each other. They map different stages of human awareness. Proverbs reflects the world as it must be intelligible, in order for moral education to function at all. Ecclesiastes reflects the world as it appears. Once a person has paid attention long enough to notice exceptions that cannot be dismissed. This is why Ecclesiastes feels destabilizing. It does not just challenge ideas, it destabilizes moral certainty itself. It forces the reader to confront the fact that wisdom can be real and still fail to protect, that righteousness can be genuine and still suffer loss, and that meaning can exist without predictability. That is a far more difficult position than cynicism, because it refuses both innocent optimism and nihilistic despair.